and welcome to Peninsula Backstage, the show that looks inside local live theater and talks about upcoming productions that you can go see. I'm Nina Perry, and I'm your host. Present Laughter is a comedy by British playwright Noel Coward that first opened in England in 1942 and then on Broadway in 1946. Since then, it has enjoyed many revival productions in the United Kingdom and the United States, and now the Pear Theater in Mountain View is performing the play from June 7th through June 30th. Today on Peninsula Backstage, we'll be talking with Walter M. Mays, director of Present Laughter, Charles Woodson Parker, who is playing the role of Gary Essendine, and Kristen Walter, who is playing the role of Liz Essendine. Walter and Kristen and Charles, welcome to Peninsula Backstage.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Well, without giving too much away, Walter, tell us about Present Laughter.
It's a rollicking comedy about a middle-aged egomaniac being attacked from all sides by all of the people in his life who he usually is able to keep at bay, and what happens when he has, as he says, a very bad day.
Okay, great. What drew you all to this material? What appeals to you most about this play?
Language?
Oh, absolutely, language.
I love intellectual comedies. These people are so smart, funny, quick.
So let's talk a little bit about Noel Coward's style for those who are less familiar with his work.
The most famous picture of Noel Coward ever taken shows him in a dressing gown reclining on an enormous bed with a long cigarette holder and a martini, and that is basically the feel I get in every Coward play ever done. It was the embodiment of witty and urbane, and a man who wrote and acted in his own plays and lived life pretty much on his own terms. When you read his letters, when you read his diaries, and when you read his the biographers who wrote about him, including the man who lived with him for many years, you get a real sense of Coward didn't pay a price for being what in the United States you would have called a sexual outlaw. I mean, Noel Coward just lived his life, and everybody just dealt with it. He was kind of amazing that way, and his work really reflects that.
So so Charles, you are going to play a role that was originated by Noel Coward. And so tell me how you're approaching that character and how you're learning the rhythms of the language.
The character, he's written it to be over the top, a caricature of himself. So I haven't done a lot of research on Coward himself. I've seen Private Lives, I've seen, Blithe Spirit. So I know what his characters are like, but I think this one's a bit melodramatic, over the top, very the typical actor that you think of when you think of actors. He's just huge and puts the blame on everybody else when he has something wrong happen to him.
Okay.
I'm gonna defer to Walter for character.
There you go.
There you go. So you mentioned a couple of other of Noel Coward's plays, Blithe Spirit, Private Lives. So how does this one resemble those or differ from those? And do you have an idea of why it was chosen for this season at the Pear rather than the other one?
The Pear did the Noel Coward chamber. It's not a musical. It's like
Oh, Coward.
it's called Oh Coward. It's like a review. It's a review.
Because he was a songwriter as well.
And incredibly, he could turn out a song in an afternoon. He was very fast and very facile, and his lyrics were wonderful. And it gave an idea to Betsy Cruz Craig, who is the newer artistic director at the Pear. It gave her the idea that the audiences might really enjoy having Coward in the season. So she came to me and she said, "I'm thinking about doing Present Laughter. Are you interested?" It has recently been revived on Broadway. Kevin Kline won a Tony for it, so I think some people it might be in their minds. And it is really never a bad time to do a play about rampant male narcissism and how we must all control it. Never a bad time.
Thank you. That was related to my next question. Does the play have the same or more resonance now than it did in the 40s? So, yeah.
I would say the same and more.
Yeah.
It's very, very funny, and his character is so over the top and such a narcissist and such a I think if it was written now, every one of his lines would start with, "Well, actually." So,
Yeah, one of the things about the play that we've spent, because we have not started blocking the play yet. We have only been having table work and talking about our characters and everything. We talked a lot about how Coward writes women with such agency and how they have control of their choices and they make their decisions, and even though they have to culturally fit in around a 1930s time period, around a very powerful and prominent man, all of the women in this cast basically say to him, no, I think it's going to go like this, not like that. And that I've always admired about Coward. I think he was no one would ever call him a feminist, but I absolutely think he was very forward thinking in the way he allowed women to have their place and proper stance on stage.
We're not just foils. All of the women in this play are not just foils for Gary. We get to have our own choices and opinions, and some of us get to win.
Excellent, excellent. So what appeals to you in general about doing works that are a little bit older versus contemporary works, and how does your approach to the project differ?
It's been a very long time since I've worked on a brand new play, and there's something to be said about the playwright being dead and not there to argue with me. It was a long time ago, but it was a live playwright, and we were working on the play, and he saw it as a very, very, very dark noir mystery, and I saw it as plot hole after plot hole after plot hole that I had to keep going. Okay, we have to come up with business in order to make this work. And he looked at me, and at one point in front of all the actors, we started screaming at each other. Him saying, if you didn't treat this play like a Laurel and Hardy comedy, and I said, well, if it made any sense, I wouldn't have to. So if the playwright is dead, you don't have those arguments.
All right. All right. So what appeals to you about doing a comedy versus a drama, say?
Oh, I love both.
Okay.
And you know, it's spring going into summer, and it's light, it's fun. But I truly enjoy doing both. They're different challenges. It's very different, the work.
Okay.
I actually find dramas a lot easier. Comedies are so much more challenging because of timing, because of intent, because of blocking, and this play gets a little crazy at times, and you just have to hit those marks, hit those cues so well, because these characters are on top of it. They've usually had these arguments multiple times, so the conversations are a lot quicker. And I think British people, at least on their television shows, speak a little quicker, pick up their cues a little quicker.
Yeah, there are 11 characters in this play. There is one set. There are 5 doors, and in one scene, all 11 people are on stage and all 5 doors are in use. To the point that one character says from off stage, I feel like I'm in a French farce, because you are.
That's what came to my mind when you mentioned all the doors.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're about ready to see a scene from Present Laughter that Charles and Kristen are going to perform for us. So let's excuse them so they can get situated on our set. And we should note that the actors are on book right now, and that's because you just started rehearsing how many days ago?
We started rehearsing 4 days ago.
4 days ago, all right. All right, so Walter, what would you like to say about this scene before we see it?
Gary Essendine is a star of the London stage. Romantic comedies are his specialty, and he is facing a midlife crisis where he has to sort of wonder why things aren't going the way he wants them to go all the time. It's been so easy up to this point, and today in particular, things are not going well. Liz Essendine is his wife legally, but they no longer live together, but she's still very much involved in his life, and especially when the chips are down and Gary needs to be told certain things, Liz is the one to do it, and that's where we are.
Okay, thank you. Let's watch.
Well, darling, tell me all about everything.
I saw the play.
Was it good?
Yes, very. We shall have to change it a bit, but Valiant's quite willing to let us do what we like. But I don't want to go on about it now until after I've mulled it over a little more. I'm seeing Morris after lunch.
I told him I can't open it till November. I must have a holiday after Africa, so there's lots of time.
Now, I want to talk to you about something else.
I don't like that tone at all. What's on your mind?
Your general behavior.
Really, Liz, what have I done now?
Don't you think it's time you started to relax?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Who was that poor creature I saw here this morning in evening dress?
She's lost her latchkey.
They often do.
Now listen to me, Liz.
You're over 40, you know.
Only just?
And in my humble opinion, all this casual scampering about is rather undignified.
Casual scampering about, indeed. You have a genius for putting things unpleasantly.
Oh, don't misunderstand me. I'm not taking a moral view. I gave that up as a hopeless years ago. No, I'm merely basing my little homily on reason, dignity, position, and let's face it, age.
It's all very fine for you to come roaring back from Paris, where you've been up to God knows what, and start to bully me.
I'm not bullying
Yes, you are. You're sitting smug as be damned on an awful little cloud and blowing down on me.
Don't bluster.
Who went away and left me pray to everybody in the first place? Answer me that.
I did, thank God.
Well then.
Would you have liked me to have stayed?
Certainly not. You drove me mad.
Well, stop shilly-shallying about then and pay attention.
This to date is the most irritating morning of my life.
You have reached a moment in life when a little restraint would be becoming.
La-di-da.
You are no longer a debonair, irresponsible juvenile. You're an eminent man advancing with every sign of reluctance into middle age.
May God forgive you, dear, for I never shall.
Never mind about that. Listen, we all know about your irresistible fascination. We've watched it going on monotonously for 20 years.
I met you the first time exactly 11 years ago next August, and you were wearing a very silly hat. You still are.
Will you be serious? Your behavior naturally affects all of us, Morris, Henry, Monica, and me. You're responsible for us, and we're responsible for you. You never lose an opportunity of lecturing us and wagging your finger in our faces when we happen to do something you don't approve of.
And am I right or am I not? Answer me that.
Oh, you're fine when dealing with other people's problems. But when it comes to your own, you're not so hot.
Of all the base ingratitude.
Just try not to be so devastatingly charming to people for a little. Think what fun it would be to be unattractive for a minute or two. Why, you might take to it like a duck to water.
Miss Darling, you really are very sweet.
Oh, dear, I might as well have been talking Chinese.
Don't be cross, it is, dear. I do see what you mean, really I do.
Well, that's rather sudden, isn't it? After your belligerence of a few moments ago.
Surely I may be allowed a little change of mood.
You're acting again.
You said some very cruel things to me. I'm upset.
If only you were.
Seriously, though. I admit I am a trifle feckless every now and then, but I don't do any harm to anybody.
You do harm to yourself and to the few, the very few, who really mind about you.
I suppose you've been discussing all this with Monica and Morris and Henry.
I haven't yet, but I will, unless I see some signs of improvement.
Blackmail, hey?
Oh, you know you hate it when we all make a concerted pounce.
The thing that astonishes me in life is people's arrogance. It's fantastic. Look at you all, gossiping in corners, whispering behind your fans, telling me what to do and what not to do. It's downright sauce, that's what it is. And what happens if I relax my loving hold on any of you for 1 minute? Disaster. I had to play a 3-month season in New York. Henry immediately gets pneumonia, goes to Biarritz to recover, meets Joanna and marries her. I go away for a brief holiday in Saint-Tropez, and when I come back, what do I
Now,
find?
we're not going to have that all
You
over again.
and Morris, between you, have bought the dullest Hungarian play ever written and put it to rehearsal with Phoebe Lucas in the leading part.
She gave a very good
Phoebe
performance.
Lucas! Playing a glamorous courtesan with about as much sex appeal as a haddock. And how long did it run?
1 week.
Yes, and that was only because the press said it was lascivious.
Isn't all this a little beside the point?
Certainly not. 20 years ago, Henry put all his money into The Lost Cavalier. Who played it for 18 months to capacity with extra matinees? I did. Who started his whole career as a producer in that play? Morris. Who went
I
on to
wish you'd stop asking questions and answering them yourself. It's making me giddy.
Where would you all be without me? Where would Monica be now if I hadn't snatched her away from that revolting old aunt of hers and given her a job?
With the revolting old aunt.
And you, one of the most depressing, melancholy actresses on the English stage, where would you be if I hadn't forced you to give up acting and start writing?
Acting.
Good God! I even had to marry you to do it.
Oh, yes. And a fine gesture that turned out to be.
Well, I was in love with you for longer than anyone else. You can't grumble.
I never grumbled. I believe in going through any experience, however shattering.
Thank you, Charles and Kristen, for giving us a sneak peek into Present Laughter. So, Walter, tell us about directing this scene. And the actors are laughing.
I have told the actors that in any one-on-one scene with Gary, that you have to constantly be aware of your position in the power structure. Because Gary is a massive scorekeeper. In the back of his mind, he is tallying up 1 point for me, 1 point for Liz, 1 point for me. And he's literally changing on a dime to decide what his next tack is going to be. So as a result, the actors who have the very few, as Liz says, who stay with him and engage with him, they know how to play the game. He likes the game. They enjoy the game. And as Kristen said, and sometimes they get to win. And that's what's really fun.
Okay. So, Kristen, how about your experience with this scene?
I love this scene. And actually, this was the scene that we did in callbacks. So this was sort of my first, and this is the first time I've worked with Charles. So that was the first thing that we did together. And it's just fun. It's sparring. And I'm such a huge fan of verbal wordplay, and that's all this is. It's just verbal sparring, and that's just fun to do.
Great. So, so the two of you have not worked together before.
No.
So, does that make it easier to work together now, or harder, or what? It seemed pretty natural up there from where I'm
We're
sitting.
having a good time.
I think the director picks actors based on their chemistry and how well they look together and work together.
I've directed him before. I've acted with her before.
Okay.
I know what they can do. And although I've literally never precast a show in my life, when you look at the audition list and who's coming, you see some names and you go, all right, I'm safe, because this person is going to be there, and if nobody else shows up, I've got my Gary, I've got my Liz. So that's how that worked out. So yes, they're ideal.
Good, great. So Charles, tell me about your approach to this character.
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, he is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I can't think that way.
Right.
I have to take everything he does super seriously. He pulls things from his acting career, so he uses scenes to manipulate people. And this is something I got from Walter. And he loves playing with people. He loves the wordplay. He loves sparring, and he lives for it. If he didn't have anybody to bounce words off of, he'd be miserable.
There is a scene in the play where he is left alone, and you get to see how awful it must be for Gary with no one to play with, because he's just he's emptying ashtrays. That's how bored he is, you know.
So Walter, you're an actor as well.
Okay.
So actors, how is it being directed by a director who's also an actor?
Oh, brilliant. Because they understand where we're coming from. I've worked with directors that have never acted, and they just, sometimes they'll expect things that you don't understand what they're asking, so you constantly have to be checking in with them or clarifying what their directions are. But Walter's been on the stage for, I'm not going to say how long, but
Long time.
and he knows what he wants. He can see it from the outside, and he just knows what we can give him and what he can push us to.
Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about the performance space at the Pear for our viewers who haven't been there yet. So it's a small theater, but it has 3 different possible seating configurations.
Yeah, it's a modularly designed space, so the audience can be long style proscenium with not a very deep stage. You can also do it profile staging, which I've seen them do there quite effectively. And then the traditional, I call it the bowling alley, and it goes kind of like this, and then those seats are in risers like this. This provides more depth of stage, but it also creates and also it also allows the most number of seats, and that's also important for the Pear because they would like this show to really sell. But the other thing is that when you design a set that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 entrances, it doesn't leave you a lot of wall space. It's like, oh my God, it's a door, it's a door. But it's the set design is pristine. Betsy, the artistic director, ran some ideas by me, and then she sort of gave it to the guy who builds the sets, and he drew it up on AutoCAD or whatever the architect people use, and then they showed it to me, and I only had to make like 2 little tiny tweaks to it, and so we'll start taping out the floor Sunday night, and there we are.
All right, all right. So will it be that sort of straight?
It'll be the bowling alley.
Okay, the
Yeah.
bowling alley.
Yeah.
All right, right. But even so, I mean, the back row isn't that far from the stage.
No,
No.
in fact, when I see shows in that configuration of the Pear, I always sit in the back row because there's the most leg room.
Oh, yes. Very good. All right. Let's back up a little bit. You know, you mentioned that Walter's been doing theater for a long time. How long have all of you been doing theater, and when did you know that you wanted to pursue it?
Collectively over 100
Yeah.
years.
Seriously. You know, for me, it was always. When I was in first grade, I convinced my teacher to let me direct the rest of the class in a play I wrote. So this was pretty much always what I was going to do. I never wanted to do anything else.
Okay. What's the name of that play? Do you remember?
I do not remember, but it was something about rain.
Okay.
I remember there being rain.
I remember doing small roles in church plays when I was 6. But what really got me into the arts was my voice changed at 10, and choir directors were scrambling to get me into their choirs for their first bass ever. But that of course, choirs and even band lead to musical theater. And then I went to the Boston Conservatory and studied musical theater. So it's awesome.
The very first play that was ever put in front of me was a production of A Christmas Carol in the 5th grade, and I misunderstood what the teacher said, and I went home and memorized all of Scrooge's lines for the audition.
Oh,
That sounds about right.
I didn't know that wasn't what you were supposed to do, and so I came in and I started doing all of Scrooge's lines, and she just looked at me and she said, "Okay, I guess you're gonna play Scrooge, okay." And then there's been no stopping me. I mean, the thing that's very, very odd for me is that while I was raising my son, and while I am a professional storyteller and a librarian and all kinds of things, and there was a 20-year period where I did no theater at all. From 30 to 50, I did no theater. And I was performing all the time because I'm a storyteller, and I was traveling all over the world. But then I came back into theater in 10 years ago, I guess, and I haven't looked back. I have not looked back.
You're not over 50.
I'm 60 this year, Charles. Yeah.
happy birthday.
Thank you.
So what sort of advice would you have for prospective actors, directors who want to get involved in local theater or who want to get back into local theater after hiatus?
Just keep doing it. Audition for things. Work with people who are better than you. Always. Seek out people who are better than you, and that is the only way that you get better at this. And just, you know, keep auditioning. It's a great, this area is a really nice local community of theaters and of actors, and everyone is so supportive. So this is a nice place to start.
Look at meetups. There are plenty of groups that get together and work on monologues for auditions, and they'll give you feedback, and they're usually really supportive and try to give you positive as well as things you need to work on.
Okay. Great, great. One more question. You mentioned musical theater.
Yeah.
Now, this play is not a musical, but Noel Coward wrote songs. Does this parts of this play that feel like a musical, or are there sort of elements of musical theater in it?
Coward's approach to musical theater is rather old school. He called all of his musicals operettes, which is the Italian term for operetta, and they were definitely born out of the descended from opera, but now there's a little dialogue in between scenes. He didn't write very many what we would think of today as traditional musical comedies. But Coward was such an influential playwright that anybody who wanted to write fast, facile, and free had to have Coward in the back of their mind. And when you are writing a scene for a musical that is leading into a musical number, you frequently have to be fast, facile, and free. And so I think he influenced a whole generation of musical theater writers without necessarily being thought of as a musical comedy writer.
I do find some of Gary's monologues and the poem, they all have a sort of musicality to them. There's a cadence, there's a flow and a tonality. So yeah, it feels musical to me, and I approach everything from a musical point of view as well.
Right, right. And just the rhythm of the dialogue that we saw, it felt, I don't know, it felt a little musical. It definitely had a pace.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, he is one of those playwrights that you cannot allow actors to add ums, ohs, ers, wells. You can't do it because his rhythms are so precise. This happened to me with Vanya and Sonia and Masha and Spike when I did it at Palo Alto Players. And Christopher Durang is another one of those playwrights who, if he starts with and or but or well, it's for a reason, and you cannot substitute one for the other. And in casual speech, we don't think like that.
Right.
And when you're doing a play with a writer as precise as Coward, you literally have to say, no, that, listen to the sentence, say it with the well, say it without the well. You'll notice it's not the same sentence. So yeah.
It's like with Pinter and those pauses.
Oh God. Yes.
You can have just a half-hour discussion with Walter on Pinter.
Right, that's right. So we won't do that. Instead, we'll start wrapping things up because we have about a minute left. And we'll recap for our viewers that Noel Coward's comic play, Present Laughter, is running at the Pear Theater in Mountain View from June 7th through June 30th. And is there a place our viewers can go online to get more information about the show?
2 places. There is the Pear Theater Facebook group.
Okay.
Okay, and then there is also www.thepair.org.
Thank you, thepair.org, and also on Facebook. Peninsula Backstage is online also. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/peninsula-backstage. Like our page if you're interested in getting updates when new episodes become available for viewing online and on the air. And once again, I'd like to thank our guests from the Pear Theater in Mountain View, Walter M. Mays, who's directing Present Laughter, and Kristen Walter, who's playing Liz Essendine, and Charles Woodson Parker, who's playing Gary Essendine, the lead middle-aged maniac. I'm trying to remember all the words used to describe him.
Narcissist. Just remember
Narcissist,
that.
thank you, that's right.
That's the big one.
That's right. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. It's going to be an exciting night of theater. And thank you to our viewers. We appreciate your watching this episode of Peninsula Backstage. And remember to go out and support local live theater.